It is my honor to speak today about Hayim Katsman and his work. It is a privilege to do so. Hayim was not only a student of mine, but over time had become a dear friend. So it is with a heavy heart that I speak today. He came into our program and really into my life as a person that was searching for his identity. Soon his curiosity, wit, diligence, and his studies won me over. And in time, I began to see flashes of his brilliance. It took a while to understand him as a person and scholar. I didn't know his past, and really it wasn't revealed to me until later that how deeply rooted he was in his Jewish religion. He mostly talked to me about being a mechanic and someone who loved the land, his kibbutz, which I visited in 2020. It was during that time that I saw someone who I knew not only as a brilliant student, but then also as a mechanic, a worker in the fields of fruit orchards, and a man who loved music, loved getting diverse and eclectic groups together to talk religion, culture, music, and the future. He seemed at home in his kibbutz, proud of his orchards, utterly at one with the land. He introduced me to his friends at what they called tongue-in-cheek, the ISIS Cafe, where he played music with his band and we drank his home-brewed beer and talked and shared our perspectives on religion, politics, and culture. To speak of him in past tense is painful. I came to cherish his mind and his friendship. I will comment on his work in the next several minutes and then end with a poem I wrote for him at our school vigil for him the night after he died. I honor Hayim with an attempt to interpret him in the context of his mean, his way, his lovely and expressive words. In preparing for this, I read his most recent work, Religion and Politics in Israel, co-authored with Guy Ben-Porat. I found the article totally engrossing, true, and powerful look at the religious politics of Israel. I'm not an expert on Israeli politics, and in that sense, I never quite knew why Hayim chose me as his advisor. I do know American religious politics, and I have always been interested in the rise of religious nationalism across the globe, including Israel. So I think this is how we connected, a connection that grew into a friendship. I think we both were interested in religion and culture, the power of religion in present politics. Some of my recent work is trying to understand the rise of Trumpism in American politics and culture, the power of evangelicalism in American life, and how it is used by politicians to win elections and to change American ideological map. And in that sense, not altogether different from what Hayim was doing in his own country. Religion is a boundary maker. I started my career by analyzing liberal Protestantism in the late 20th century, a powerful religion, political movement to expand presentation and representation of minorities. And while achieving these gains, it ran into a growing reservoir of evangelicals in the American bloodstream, who, in the last generation, have wiped out what remains of a once proud liberal Protestant culture that is now subsumed by forms of patriarchal conservative Protestantism. This once strong tradition of Nebarian politics is now defunct. Perhaps those of you studying Israel might relate. So religion, both in my country and it seems to an extent in Israel, rises out of a religious nationalism that shapes, forms, and catches enough of us to make gains in power and politics. Hayim analyzes this rise within the Israeli political bloodstream in what seems to me to be an artful and accurate definition of what is happening in Israeli politics. As he writes, first, the rise of religious Zionism attempted to replace secular Zionism in leading the Zionist movement. Second, conservatism added another dimension of politics where religion combined with hawkish and neoliberal stances. Finally, populism, wider in appeal than the two other trends, also brought religion to the fore. And here in the last sentence, Hayim catches the real power of religion. Religion not only strengthened the exclusionary demands against non-Jews, but also created a hierarchy of loyalty and an anti-elite stance. Moreover, Ben-Gurion made skillful compromises with religion and the state, enabling secular and religious political elites to formulate compromises and avoid conflict. To sway the Labor Party, which dominated in the arena of foreign policy and domestic security policy, in return for Orthodox monopoly over significant aspects of public life. The ultra-Orthodox received exemptions from military service, gaining a sense of independence through education and funding for their needs. Religion became instrumental, if not indispensable, for boundary maintenance. Most of the secular society was secure and left alone, sharing a widespread idea of a Jewish state that maintained boundaries but did not force faith on them. This secularization was sustained but then undermined vis-a-vis globalization, consumer culture, the immigration from the former Soviet Union, including many who had no interest or affiliation with their faith, and more assertive non-religious groups who rejected religion altogether. This was followed by an economic growth that took off in the 1990s, introducing culture to consumerism and the new forms of hedonism in middle-class daily life. Even so, while many Jews no longer define themselves as religious, their attachments remain. As Katsman and Ben Barat explain, Jews, while defining themselves as non-religious, remain attached to religion, including basic rites of marriage, the Sabbath for the sake of burial and death. And as Katsman explains, religious institutions did not remain passive, which he explains by describing recent movements using the word hadatta, or religionization, to frame this field. Through immigration, Mizrahim from Muslim countries, the Shahs, became powerful, as Hayim writes. A vote for Shahs was a vote for a more religious state. Three more activities changed. First, the attempt by religious Zionism to assume a leading role. Second, the rise of conservatism, providing another linkage between religion and boundary setting. And third, which is a critical rise of populism and religion serving as a market separating both people and non-people and real people from elites. With this rise of religious Zionism, only 12% of Israeli Jewish population nonetheless created a powerful political and religious establishment that helped to prevent a peace agreement with Palestinians. The Zionist movement created a national Jewish identity versus a secular nation state. The 1977 alliance with the Labor Zionist Party was abandoned. Religious Zionist Party began supporting Menachem Begin, with the growing influence of the Gush Umanim transforming forms of religious Zionism to a Zionist religion. Following the teachings of Rabbi Kook, religious Zionism viewed the triumphant results of the 1967 war occupation of East Jerusalem by Zionists as a victory, leading to the occupation of East Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights, important because of the actualization of a divine redemptive process. Religious Zionists came to believe that secular Zionism has fulfilled its mission and finished its role. Thus, the evacuation for the Gaza settlements in 2005 was indeed a watershed moment for the religious Zionist state approach. It is hard to overestimate its impact on religious Zionism. This disengagement was interpreted as a political failure. Kookist interpreted this uprooting of settlements as a failure of their duty to God. It was incomprehensible. States are religiously determined, but they only hold onto this banner if they advance religious goals. Religious Zionism had not assumed political power, but with the success of their settlements, they created facts on the ground and the theocratization of their military command. In the early 2010s, there was a rise of Israeli conservative movement. The Tikva Fund, the Holit policy, the Jewish Statesmanship Center, fueled by American immigrants, created a combination of new social movements, liberal economics, a deregulation, judicial restraint, a fierce form of Jewish nationalism. This was hawkish right-wing politics with fierce battles over evacuation of Amona in 2006 and the phenomenon of the Hilltop Youth and price tag violent incidents going on. Disengagement motivated religious Zionist Kukis' idea of the Israeli state as the foundation of God's throne in the world. Another important takeaway of the disengagement plan, Hardim, ultra-Orthodox, and secular Israelis, the conservative movement provided a non-religious ideology to support Jewish nationalism. The emerging conservative movement in Israel provided a coherent worldview and more money and institutions for religious Zionist individuals who were motivated to take political action. In 1997, Netanyahu paid a visit to Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, the Sephardic religious leader, whispering to the rabbi's ear, "The left has forgotten what it is to be a Jew." To be sure, religion often acts as a form of anti-elitism. Begin often used religion and religious discourse, among other things, to distinguish the Likud from the secular labor left. "We shall follow the name of our Lord forever. I announce that the government of Israel will not ask any nation to acknowledge our right to exist. We have received that right from God." Thus, the rejection of labor's secularism. Likud withdrew from its liberal roots and commitments. Religion becomes a litmus test for loyalty, separating authentic members of the nation from the cosmopolitan and disloyal elites. Religious language and symbols accentuate fears and gave means for action to protect nation and border. More and more leaders adopt religious language to demonstrate loyalty. The last 2 decades in Israel has been described as fixated on Jewish religious-based ethnicity. The law has not made similar commitments to equality and democracy, nor has it taken into account the Arab-Palestinian narrative of national belonging, here by marginalizing Israel's Arab and other non-Jewish citizens. The nationality law legislated by the Israeli parliament in June 2018 consolidated the definition of Israel as the state of Jewish people. A poll by the Israel Democracy Institute showed that many Jews object to including Arabs in Israeli decision-making, supporting discrimination towards Arabs, and even object to Arabs living in their vicinity. A poll by the Pew Research Center in 2016 has shown that 48% of Israelis support the expulsion of Arabs from Israel, and that Jewish citizens of different political and social backgrounds remain united in the view that Israel is the country of the Jewish people. In this sense, any notion of a rising cosmopolitan Israeli political community seems naive at best. And considering the state of Israel, post the cruel events of Gaza, a return to a cosmopolitan ethos seems like whistling in the dark. Hayim concludes with these ominous words. First, the rise of religious Zionism attempted to replace secular Zionism in leading the Zionist movement. Second, conservatism added another dimension of politics where religion combined with hawkish and neoliberal stands. Finally, populism, wider in appeal than the two other trends, also brought religion to the fore. Religion not only strengthened exclusionary demands against non-Jews, but also created a hierarchy of loyalty and an anti-elite stance. It seems Hayim had it right. This is the reason for praise, in the sense that Hayim saw things as they are and did not blink. He recorded his thoughts and ideas, and it seems to me he was right about his forecast. What hits me so hard is that he paid with his life for these insights, while ironically being undeserving object of Hamas's wrath. If nothing else, Hayim remained deeply humanistic in his instincts, egalitarian in his common life, a pacifist, it seems to me, one who would give away what he needed to anyone in need. He died protecting life, and that is as it should be. I know it's not common to make personal comments in these times, but I will anyway. I love this man. He was my friend. I deeply miss him, his humanity, his brilliance, and his wisdom. I wrote this poem to say goodbye for a mourning moment at the UW in April. It's entitled, For Hayim. It is not enough. Sometimes it is enough to say I met Hayim in 2018 at a cafe on Finney Ridge. He came in, hair crowned like a lion. Sometimes it's enough to say that he participated in my seminars, short, pithy, willing to question, argue, sustain dialogue. Sometimes it is enough to say that I found him brilliant and taciturn, like there was more here, more to say, more to know, more to find. Sometimes I found his papers brilliant, beginnings in critique, beginnings of his search, his restless, ever-daunting search for his way, his meaning. Sometimes amidst confusion and a daunting trek from here to there, frustrated, wanting more and refusing to let go. Sometimes I saw a student beginning to open to his way, beginning to know what he wanted to explain, to tell the world. And then sometimes the words came and they tumbled over. And his efforts to mine, to dig, to unbury the very notion of hegemony, of power, to build it in the hills and valleys of religious Zionist. He did the work. Sometimes the work was impossible and forbidden, and yet he persevered. And we saw a new way, a new view of the peculiar pattern that said, look, we know who these communities are. We know what they want. Sometimes your brilliance, my friend, made me worry for you. In between, neither here nor there, caught in trespass and division, and all the while just wanting to understand a field of confusion and violence. And you remained. Sometimes I wondered, in your kibbutz, in your pattern of life in the hills and the streets, in the auto shops of your making, in the places you lived, in a humble place, in a desert that you made a garden. And then I came to that place, like a revelation I saw. I saw you. I saw you. Sometimes it is enough to see a man, a friend, whom I love in his place, and know him as if for the first time, in the earth, of the earth, for it, for your community, for your people. And then sometimes in the middle of this desert, something happens. A band plays, you bring music and song to a rundown shack you call ISIS. We drink your beer, tongue in cheek, forever. And people from every corner of the world come and talk and drink, and you at the middle. And I, for how many times, marvel, cheer, frame you in that place. Sometimes I thought this is making heaven in the desert, talking, listening, thinking, loving, indifference in language and religion and culture. And I think this is what you are, a beautiful architect of life, of community, of thought, of being, of doing what you are and who you are. Sometimes, this time, it is enough, and yet not enough, because you are gone, protecting your people. You are gone. Sometimes, this time, I miss you. I will not see you again. Sometimes, this time, I feel wrecked. I do now. I do now. Sometimes, it is enough to say I knew you, but it is not enough. It is not enough. Sometimes it is simply not enough. Thank you. Thank you for listening.